Some events are so unbelievably disturbing that they've remained a part of the history books ever since. War, famine, or just plain old slaughter. These historical events are so dark that you won't forget them anytime soon. I'm Mike with List 25, and let's waste no time getting started with a part of history that really stinks. It sounds like a villain from a children's cartoon, but the Great Stink was very real, and it was a major problem for London in 1858 when the city became a victim of its own waste and the smell that came with it. The sewer system couldn't keep up with demand, so Joseph Bazalgette was brought in to redesign it and rebuild it from the ground up. His sewer system saved London and is still operational today. In 2017, a discovery was made that was so disturbing that it almost defies belief. Wedged deep into the sewers of London was a 250-foot-long fatberg. The term is new, but the problem has been building up for years. A fatberg is exactly that, a mass of cooking oil and other fats that have congealed into one giant mass of slimy mess. Imagine coming face to face with that for the first time. Staying in London, with a period of history that must have been terrifying to experience. The plague was the scourge of early London, with 16 outbreaks between 1348 and 1665. When the plague hit, a lot of people fell victim to it. That means there were a lot of bodies to dispose of, and so the City of London decided to build mass graves, and they called them plague pits. The most infamous of all held 1,000 bodies and is directly under Aldgate Underground Station. The problem of burying the dead only got worse as the years went on. In 1829, London's graveyards were full, but architect Thomas Wilson came up with a plan that would thankfully be a little more respectful than a plague pit. He proposed building a pyramid to house the dead, and his ideas were off the scale. The 94-story high building would fit an astonishing 5 million people, which is almost impossible to imagine. Sadly, Thomas never got to build his dream, but full credit to him for trying. Not one single person on the planet has done more to help the environment than Genghis Khan, and he did it without even realizing it. He killed so many people, 40 million allegedly, that he reduced the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's a shocking fact and shows just how devastating his reign was. Well, at least Genghis Khan's victims were dead when they were placed in the grave, which can't be said for the next people on our list. Back when medical science wasn't what it was today, mistakes were often made. Sometimes those ended up with someone being declared dead when that wasn't the case at all. Accidentally burying people alive was not as rare as you think and is utterly terrifying to imagine. Between 1897 and 1907, people in the areas of Nepal and Koman, India were victims of a vicious tiger that found a taste for human blood. She ultimately had no choice, as man had started to invade her homeland, so in order to survive, she found an alternative option to her usual diet and started feeding on people. In the end, it's believed she accumulated almost 500 victims before she was shot and killed. Next, a disaster that nobody saw coming. Or did they? The Titanic is one of the most tragic disasters of all time. Lost by a twist of fate as it collided with an iceberg and began to sink, the ship and its passengers suffered a disturbing end. The thing is, those events are also the plot of a book released 14 years before the Titanic set sail. The coincidences don't end there, as the book was called Titan. Was this an eerie premonition, or just coincidence? Not ready to say goodbye to that loved one after they've gone? Well, don't worry, the Victorians have got you covered. Back then, the morbid practice of taking a picture of your own relatives after they died was common. To make it more disturbing, they propped them up in a chair and even posed with them, as if they were still alive, which is a huge no for me. Even babies aren't safe from this list, as we look at a period in time that sounds crazy today. Believe it or not, there was a time when we didn't give babies anesthetic when we operated on them, and because of a simple misconception. Babies can't feel pain, they claimed, so there was no need to offer them pain-numbing drugs. Only, it turned out we were wrong. In 1987, the American Academy of Pediatrics determined that anesthesia had to be given to babies, as it was kind of a little cruel not to. But there are far worse things than that have happened to babies. It's the Victorian era again, where single mothers were heavily frowned upon. It was so bad that mothers would give up their children so they could work and put food on the table. Baby farmers would adopt these babies for free, but often the babies didn't survive, as these farmers were ill-equipped to cope. Speaking of being ill-equipped, we're going to take a look at a hiking party that ran into some serious trouble. In the winter of 1959, a group of hikers set out walking through the Soviet Union, unaware they would never return. Exactly what happened to those hikers still remains a mystery, as they were all found dead, and through the most sinister circumstances. During their trip, the group camped out on the slopes of Kolatsakil. While there, they saw something so terrifying that they cut their way out of their tent and fled into the night. With almost no clothing, they didn't last long. But we'll never know what it was that they saw that caused them to flee in the first place. In order to see if space rockets were safe, scientists needed an alternative to humans to use as test pilots. This was a time when animal welfare was virtually non-existent, and pets were treated like nothing more than lab rats. Thrust into space, these unwilling animals would help determine whether a human could survive the journey. Sadly, there were a lot of fatalities, from dogs to monkeys, leaving a sad legacy in the history of space travel. We all know the story of Hiroshima, but it's what happened afterwards that can't be forgotten. Left to fend for themselves, the survivors were forced to search for their own family members in a grim task that must have been heartbreaking to experience. During the war between Bosnia and Serbia in the 90s, the city of Sarajevo became a furious battleground. The city's main boulevard became known as Sniper Alley, and it's a terrifying and sickening part of this brutal war. Snipers would pick off people at random, so crossing the street was a matter of life and death. No one was safe, not even children. And no one was safe in this next entry on this list, so cue the music. If you thought the events of the movie Jaws came from the mind of Steven Spielberg, you're dead wrong. The idea didn't even come from the Peter Benchley book the movie was based on. It came from real life. In 1916, the Jersey Shore was terrorized by a shark with an insatiable appetite. In just 10 days, it made 5 separate attacks and killed 4 of those victims. Just like the movie, this shark was a great white. But I think I'd rather be in those shark-infested waters than in this next living hell. Nothing good ever comes from a black hole, and the black hole of Calcutta is no exception. In the 1700s, Calcutta was a ruthless place to be, especially if you were captured and thrown into the black hole. It was basically a dungeon that was cramped and so dangerously hot that many didn't survive the ordeal. By 1932, the emu population of Australia had exploded to concerning numbers. The public wanted action, and the government would oblige. Sadly, they messed it up big time. The military were armed with Lewis guns, and the term the Emu War was born. It wasn't a major success, as it turns out the emus were pretty smart and could outwit the Australian military. Who would have believed it? More animals are coming up, and this next entry is going to be explosive. Imagine enjoying a walk on the beach, only for it to start raining whale blubber. Well, this actually happened. In the US, a dead whale was found stranded on a beach in Oregon. Residents needed to get rid of the body, as the smell would have become almost unbearable, so they had a crazy idea that defied logic. They decided to blow it up with dynamite, and predictably, it went horribly wrong, and the town ended up covered in rotting whale flesh. In Boston, 1919, a giant tank of molasses suddenly exploded without warning, sending a 25-foot wave tumbling through the streets. It was no laughing matter, as 22 people ended up losing their lives in the chaos and 150 were left injured. Also known as the Korean Axe Murder Incident, Operation Paul Bunyan was a squabble between American and North Korean forces that ended up costing the lives of 2 soldiers. The US Army had cut down a tree considered a national treasure, so the Koreans retaliated. But they maybe went too far, as they killed 2 of the men responsible with an axe. Some historical events are so catastrophic that they can even alter the weather. The eruption of Mount Tambora is the largest ever recorded in human history. The ash released was so widespread that 1815 went without a summer. Snow in June, hailstorms in August, the planet's weather system went crazy, but eventually recovered. Japanese fighters had more than enemy troops to worry about during the Battle of Ramree Island, as the area was populated by an even bigger threat. The island was swarming with crocodiles, and their favorite meal was dressed in camouflage. During the battle, it's said over 1,000 men were eaten alive. And finally, this last entry on today's list might just leave a sour taste in your mouth. Back before dental hygiene was up to the standards we enjoy today, we had to improvise a little. The Romans were experts at this, but some of their techniques of keeping their teeth clean might gross you out, because instead of mouthwash, they used urine. Yummy. That's not even the worst part, as this urine was often collected from public bathrooms. Well, that was fun, so let's end on an equally fun quiz. 1 in 200 people are rumored to be descendants of which tyrannical leader featured in this list today? A. Adolf Hitler, B. Kim Jong-un, or C. Genghis Khan? Let me know what your answer is in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, do more commenting, subscribe, click that notification bell, tell us all what you think, do all that, and if you like this video, you should probably check out this other chilling video, the 25 most disturbing children's toys ever made. Thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you next time. It's late, my voice is sounding terrible. It is 1 in the morning, so sorry for that.